What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Powerlifting Quick Fix. Today we're going to be looking at joint health. More specifically, focus is going to be around the elbow and the knee, as they are the two most common issues for the likes of tendinitis. Patellar tendinitis and elbow issues are the two most commonly heard things to me anyway. Firstly, a little disclaimer: if you don't compete or don't want to compete in powerlifting, strongman or any strength related sport where the following exercises are sort of required, then don't do squat, bench or deadlift. Sure, they're the best bang for buck in terms of muscle recruitment, strength gain, whatnot. From the joint perspective, which is what we are going to be talking about today, they just aren't really worth it in my opinion. And so if you can, I would look at removing those and finding replacements. And that process there is called not picking the scab, which is something I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into later on in this video. The first and most important component for me is going to be blood flow. I'm a big believer in that sort of blood flow with limited tendon loading is awesome for maintaining and rehabilitating joints. And so for me, on your rest days, during your warm-ups, post-training, whenever you can, hammer the exercises that I'm going to talk about throughout this video. Okay, so the first thing I want to dive into today is sort of rest days and how we utilise them and the activity that we're going to have. I'm a big fan of the 10-minute walk, as you know, and I don't want to dive into too much detail. I'll talk about it in another video. It isn't today's focus, but 10-minute walks, increased insulin sensitivity, improved nutrient partitioning, better digestion, reduced blood sugars and blood pressure. There's so many benefits, as well as the fact that it is additional cardio and steps and expenditure and all that. For me, they are king. But if you don't want to do that and you have the accessibility of a resistance bike, then use that. For me, cycling is an awesome way of sort of reducing delayed onset of muscle soreness, warming up or warming down, or even just a little bit of rest activity if you want to get some cardio in. Cycling is concentric loading. If you go through the motion of a cycle, there's no sort of eccentric loading where we're going to break down muscle tissue. It's constant concentric loading. And so for me, that is probably one of the best activities you can do if you are wanting to maintain and putting a lot of focus into maintaining good joint health or looking to rehabilitate your potentially weaker joints. I'm going to talk a lot throughout this video about Dr. Stuart McGill. I think he's the absolute GOAT, and I use a lot of his methods, the first of which is his 3-stage process of rehabilitation. For me, I'll use this at any given niggle that my client will talk about. They may say, had a slight bit of pain today, okay, let's do this. Because prehabbing is better than rehabbing, I'm telling you from experience. And so his 3-stage process goes a little bit like this. 1, eliminate the source. If you're going through a hack squat period and your hack squat's really starting to hammer your knees and you're beginning to accrue some patellar tendinitis, remove it, eliminate the source. And this brings us on to the second point of Dr. Stuart McGill's 3-stage method, which is finding pain-free movements. So once you've eliminated the source, replace it with something that doesn't aggravate the tendon in the same way, or the bone or the ligament or the joint or whatever. Once you've identified that new movement that you're going to do, move. And as I've spoken about, 10-minute walks, cycling, or I'll even apply some context to this in the fact that we're in a lockdown here in the UK. I don't know about where you guys are from, but let's apply some context to this. You don't have a resistance bike, you don't have a leg press, so you can't do banded leg presses. Okay, so walk up and down your staircase. Concentric loading, no eccentric breakdown of tissue, no tendon loading. Now, Dr. Stuart McGill's methods are what I believe to be gospel, in my opinion. And he has 2 books which are on the screen now. The Gift of Injury, which he does with Brian Carroll, of whom was in the last episode talking about the spine. And then we also have The Back Mechanic, which he has done. I've read both. Now, they are a little bit on the expensive side from books. So if you don't want to pay them, then sign up for a month of coaching and you get them for free. Speaking of which, if you want to get involved with my online coaching, which I do offer each month, then my Instagram is currently on the screen, so drop me a message or just drop me a follow, either of which are appreciated. Okay, so beyond rest day activity, we're going to look at how we can sort of rehabilitate if you have currently got a little bit of an injury and you want to take additional steps in order to ensure that that injury is going to get better. Okay, so accommodated resistance. We've heard this before through Louis Simmons' Westside Barbell and the Soviets' approach to training. And accommodated resistance in simple terms is the load is light where the knee or elbow or joint is weaker. And so with an exercise, my 2 favourites are the banded leg press and the tricep extension. So if you band tricep extension, the load is light where the elbow is most compromised, which is going to decrease tendon loading whilst being able to hammer 5 sets of 25 and get 125 reps in, which is a shit ton of blood flow, which is a load of oxygen, a load of nutrients, a load of blood, and it's going to reduce the amount of toxins in your muscles massively. And so for me, that's awesome for recovery, and I will always give my clients recommendations, whether they're injured or not, to do banded exercises and accommodated resistance exercises for joint purposes. How can you progress this? Okay, so we can add reps, we can add load, we can reduce rest times. The same principle applies, progressive overload, making sure that this week's set was better than yesterday's or last week's or last rotations, whatever. In terms of the exercise itself, if your legs are sort of on here as the leg press, if you bring them in and down, it's going to focus more on your patella, and so that's a progression. I work very closely with Stan Efferdin. As a lot of you guys know, I preach a lot of his methods with the vertical diet, with his approach to rehabilitation, etc, etc, and I'm a big fan, and I've worked very closely with him. He monitors my stuff, and so one thing that he says which really sort of catches my attention and I really like is that things that are done to you are never as good as things that you do to or for yourself. So in simple terms, this means that active recovery is far better than acupuncture, cupping, electric stem. Speaking of which, these treatments are like electric stems, stem cell injections and stuff. They don't work much better than a placebo anyway, the research shows that, and even if there is some small amount to gain, you're also going to have a small amount to lose by getting stabbed with a needle directly in the knee. And so for me, it's sort of not really worth it, and I don't want to pour my time and my pain into this to get very minimal returns. I'm a bang for your buck kind of guy. I'd rather go through active recovery, pain-free, free, and most effective. In addition to this supplementation, I mean, supplements like glucosamine, sure, they are provide a benefit. Again, is it going to be as good as active recovery? No, but I'm sort of a 1-2% guy. If it's going to give you an additional 2%, then maybe that 2% is going to be enough to take you from second to first in your powerlifting meet because you've got 2% better joints. If it's worth it and you've got the money and you don't mind spending it, go for it. The second of Dr. McGill's methods which I use is the post-surgery rehabilitation program. In that, imagine you are going to go and have some elbow surgery, okay? Post the elbow surgery, you're going to be given a rehabilitation plan. Do that. Forget the surgery for now. Do that, because often that is what yields the most results from the surgery process. Anyway, it provides eliminating the source. It gives you pain-free movements, and you will move. Again, if you remember the 3-stage process of McGill earlier in the video. And so for me, have a go at that. Another important thing to understand is to understand movement patterns, okay? Your elbow goes through 2 ranges of motion, flexion and extension. It doesn't do circumduction like the shoulder does. So don't get doing all these funky exercises to stretch and loosen it off, because especially from a strength sport angle, loose isn't what you want anyway. Another one from last video, the core is a stabilizer, not a flexor. So don't get doing this as part of your sort of warm-up routine. You want a tight, rigid, strong core, not a loose, floppy core, because then you're just going to get crumbled under the bar. The same principle applies to your joints. Go through the range of motions that it can do. Some people may not know the cause, so they don't know how to eliminate the source. If you're doing a low bar squat, you are loading your bone. Now when you load your bone, firstly it takes 5 days to recover, so don't then try and squat 3 days later. Muscles, 48, 72 hours, you know, they're going to be a little bit less, but it's the same principle. But especially looking at bones, it takes at least 5 days to recover, especially if you're doing a heavy low bar squat where the bar is low down on your back and your elbows are taking a lot of that weight. When you load your bones under a squat, for example, they are going to bend. They are. And they are going to deform. Now when they deform, only slightly and nothing to worry about, but when they deform, they sort of give off this electric charge. Now this electric charge absorbs calcium, absorbs magnesium ions, for example, and during this period of time when it is fixing itself, it is very vulnerable. So if you train squat on Tuesday and then you go to train squat on Thursday, even though the rehabilitation won't finish till Saturday, then you are probably going to see a lot more of a risk because it is vulnerable during this period of healing time. And so don't be an idiot, wait, give it the time. For me, I will squat Wednesday and I won't squat again until the following Wednesday because I don't want to train when I'm vulnerable. So the take homes for me are improve your active recovery on rest days through the likes of a walk or a cycle or even the stairs. If you have a stimulus of an injury or you are having pain, eliminate the source, find a pain-free movement and goddamn move. If you're looking for an exercise to improve your current state of joint health or you're looking to rehabilitate your slightly weaker joints, go through motions that are within the movement pattern. So if it's your elbow, go through flexion extension. If it's your knee, go through flexion and extension. and do so with accommodated resistance, where you can load the joint where the load is lighter, where the joint is weaker. And do so through the likes of a leg press or tricep extension, or if you don't have an actual leg press machine, hold a band, wrap it around your foot and extend. There are plenty of ways you can do this at home, so there are no excuses really. Of course I am willing to help you out, and if you have any topics, anything else you want me to discuss, then do follow me on Instagram on the screen, drop a comment below, whatever, I appreciate it. If you drop me a follow, likewise I would appreciate if you recommend any future videos you want to see. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.